But the queen of bonsai is definitely the white pine. Like I said, it has that softer feel to it. I feel like, honestly, I'm petting a dog or something. It really does feel like a soft paintbrush when you compare it to like these guys right here. It's a lot more firm. The needles are definitely a little bit more sharp, a little bit more pokey. Here, try this one. Right? Yeah, no, it's hard, right? And then you put this one, it's like it's very soft. But like the another reason, so one of the, aside from that being one of the biggest reasons, you're also looking at like the bark as well. So you're looking right here. So while the black pine tends to be a little bit more smooth, you see that one looks a little bit more rough, which is funny because again, the softer needles. But this one has a very silvery, kind of like a silvery blue look to it. It's a little harder to see on camera. Let me see if I can put it a little closer if you guys could see the color difference. But there is a silver bluish hue to that, and that's where it gets its name. But it is indeed a different style of tree than the black pines that you typically see. Now, a lot of the times you'll see the white pines grafted to a different tree, typically like a black pine, but this one right here does not look like it's been grafted at all. It looks like it's been growing naturally right from the dirt itself. So this one looks, yeah, I believe this one's just a full white pine. So, but again, you know, these are definitely considered the queen of the pines. I'm sorry, of the bonsai. Absolutely gorgeous tree as well. Honestly, we have one left. So next I want to show you guys the black pines. I'm going to show you guys a couple different styles. These are probably two of my favorite Literati style black pines. And this is where you're going to see my bias a little bit. I'm a sucker for exposed roots. And I feel like these are like the best examples of the exposed root bonsai, or, you know, the exposed roots that we have, because they're so tall compared to like the other black pines that I'll show you guys a little bit later. So typically, as a tree is growing out in the wild, you know, it's surrounded by other trees. So it's going to try to grow, you know, as much sun as possible. And then the bottom branches and everything, they just kind of shed those because they're not getting any sun. So why, you know, why grow them? They're not going to waste that energy. And so that's what this is kind of supposed to represent, is that tall growth, and you don't have a lot of the needles, a lot of the branches going from there. But going back to what why I like these trees, and the exposed root, in my opinion, is one of the most identifying pieces if you're buying a bonsai from somebody else, that a lot of care went into these, because it's not a natural thing for the tree to do. Basically what they do is whenever it's time to repot, which I recommend doing every 2 to 3 years, they'll brush off all the dirt off the roots and everything. They'll trim the roots, whatever they need to do. But then they'll also separate, like, you know, some of the thicker roots. Like this one, for example, is probably one of the thickest one in the groups. And what they do is they kind of get some wire to kind of leave it outside of the dirt, and then they put the rest back in, or whichever ones they want to expose. Sometimes it might be multiple per repotting. And then once they repot it, the air, the oxygen, is going to start, you know, like the roots exposed to the oxygen, and it actually makes it, you know, a lot thicker, and it makes it more wood-like. Because a lot of the roots on the inside of the dirt are a little bit softer, a little bit more malleable. But as soon as it hits that oxygen, it's going to start becoming a lot more firm. So personally, I think that's one of the greatest signs of a tree that has been shown a lot of care, that's been trained and raised correctly. I mean, it's not mandatory that you have the exposed roots, but it does show that somebody did care, you know, about the growth, about the look, the visual aesthetic of the tree. You know, give it a little bit of a curve and just let the needles grow long. And again, you know, it does have the nice firm needles, a little darker than the white pines that I was showing you guys earlier. And these look like they're starting to grow candles as well. And so basically the candles are the little buds on the inside that's basically growing a new branch. And again, similar to the Shimpaku, the needles themselves, because so these typically stay out in like colder, windy, snowy climates. So whenever it snows, the needles stay thin in order to not collect as much snow. That way it's not being blocked from collecting sun. So I think that's pretty interesting for these guys right here. And a lot of, like I said, a lot of collectors, a lot of enthusiasts tend to really like the black pine themselves. Now, the next tree I want to show you is still a black pine, but notice how wide these are, right? These are the ones I'm going to show you are probably some of my favorite ones, just because they're so different and unique looking. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that all the trees look alike. However, when you look at the other ones, like look at how big and how much, not how much room they take up because they're still small technically, but these guys right here are almost alien looking. And I have plenty more of these too, I believe. But these guys are very different. And it's because of the way that it was raised, right? So when it was a smaller tree, when it had like the branches, thank you. I have another one over here. I'll go swap it out a little bit. Actually, this one is a good example that I could show you. So we can leave these guys rotating. So when it's a smaller tree, just a sapling, the more traditional way to do it is they let one branch really grow really long. And then while it's still soft, before it hardens, they wrap it around the tree and it creates this bulbous look. Now, this was done a little bit differently. More traditionally, they use the branch, but more modern times, it's a little easier to do it with the wire. And you see some wire. Show some wire on that one? Yeah. But here you can see the wire coming out right here, and that is normal. It's not. It's like it's still growing, right? So basically, what happens? It's basically the same thing. So they wrap the wire around instead of the branch, and as the inner branch starts growing, it starts becoming a lot more bulbous and like completely swallowing the wire. And you can see this one is in the process of doing that as well. So yes, and it doesn't harm the tree. I know a lot of people wonder about that, but it legitimately does not harm the tree. This is, again, the Shimpaku Juniper, very iconic. Again, you'll see it a lot. You'll see it often in like the, movies and TV shows and stuff when people typically either talk about bonsai or they want something to look, Japanese in the background. So what's particularly interesting, what really makes the Shimpaku Juniper stand out, typically you see a lot of like, aside from the black pines, you see a lot of leafy trees, right? But these don't actually have leaves. So what they do is, because they're typically out in, out in nature, they're typically found in like the mountainous regions, like where it's a lot cooler. And a lot windier as well. They've kind of grown to grow scales instead of leaves. And what happens is when it gets colder, and windier, the leaves tend to, get knocked off, but the scales, the way that they're kind of growing here, and it's a little harder to see on over the chat or the camera. Let's see if I can put it closer. You can see that it's just made up of a bunch of tiny scales. That does not look great. You can see it in the background, needles. But yeah, it makes it easier for snow to fall off the leaves, or I don't know if there's an actual name for that, but for whatever it is, it makes it easier for wind to pass by. It makes it easier for snow to fall off of it. That way it's able to continuously get the sun. Honestly, I think it's a neat little, factoid. Another thing you're going to notice with these trees right here is that yes, it does have the copper wire going around it. It's at the stage of its life where you are going to be able to adjust the branches how you want. And so in about 6 to 8 months, you're going to be able to remove the wires and basically, it should stay in the position that you left it in for about a year, and then you're going to rewire it. And that's the natural life cycle of, well, not natural because, you're putting the wire on it, but that's the typical life cycle of any bonsai. What's really nice about the Trident Maples, which is what this is, and you can tell how it got its name just by looking at the leaves right here. The leaves themselves turn like they have a great gradient of colors. They go from like green to like a yellow to an orange to just at the during fall, just a really nice auburn red. And so throughout the year, these leaves will change color on you. Oh, it's just gorgeous. And also the root over rock is just such a neat style. But if you guys are brand new to bonsai, these are great to get started with. I know, jumping into the bonsai hobby seems imposing, seems kind of scary because, it's basically a living thing. But I'm going to be honest with you, these guys are probably the most forgiving. So if you prune it a little too hard, the leaves will come back pretty quickly. If you forget to water it, it's not going to be the end of the world. These guys are pretty hardy. Yeah, so again, if you're a beginner, these should be a really good one to get started with. And honestly, they're gorgeous. Like, I love the fact that they're root over rock. You can see that, it's really, the way that it was trained is already kind of climbing over the rock. And as it gets bigger, it's really going to swallow the rock as well. It almost has like, it reminds me of an octopus tentacle. So as it kind of goes around and just kind of gives it that grip, right? And you can see this one really does go around. It's just like completely holding that rock in place. Like, it really is, and I keep saying it only because I think it's hilarious. It does have that octopus grip. So these right here are going to be the boxwoods. So the boxwoods are pretty neat. They have an ancient looking craggly bark. And as I said before, all of our trees are roughly about 10 years, give or take. And what they do, so again, they have that craggly look, and they also have the micro leaves. You can see that the leaves are very small. And it's not because it's a younger tree, it's just because that's how it grows. As it grows bigger, the tree itself, the leaves themselves are not going to get wider like you would see with a lot of the leaves. With a lot of the other trees, the leafy trees, as it gets older, they're going to start producing more full size, like much bigger leaves. There are ways to get around that. Typically what they do is around summer, they'll prune the leaves off. And then, that gives the tree enough time before fall to put all its excess energy into creating more leaves. But because there's less energy to do it, the leaves grow small, which is the way to maintain the smaller leaves, maintain that miniature tree look. However, these trees, the boxwoods, they do not grow bigger. This is as big as the leaves are going to get, which is kind of funny because it also creates such a dense canopy. So during, we initially got these during winter, right? And we had dressed it up like, put like a little red bow, and we had like little styrofoam balls that we would put into the tree. And the canopy is so dense that literally there's no hanging on it. We just literally just placed it in there and it's stuck in there, right? So in our shop, it's called the Christmas tree bonsai. Just so in case you guys are wondering, it's still the boxwood. It's just, labeled as the Christmas tree bonsai. But these guys are pretty cool because, again, right out of the box, you will be receiving something that looks like it was just shrunk down from the outside and we put it into the little pot. It looks like it should be sitting right in our driveway. Seriously. So again, remember, the other ones were a little bit more horizontal, while these grow a little bit more vertical. And that's just the way that they're, trained and raised as far as like the growth of the tree. So you could see here is a good example. Now, again, the other ones have a different leaf, so it is a different tree. And you can see that the trunk is a little bit more tapered as well. Basically, as these grow, there's a channel that's drilled into the rock, and as it's a younger tree, do I have the other one? Yeah, the one where you could really, the smaller trunk. There you go. So here's a good example. So this one's a little bit smaller. This one's still newer to the rock. It's still finding its home. So you can see what I'm talking about. It you know, like they put the trunk into the groove of the rock, and it grows around it. So once it starts getting older, it starts to look more like these right here. And you can tell that as it grows wider, it's going to start to swallow the rock, is probably the best way to explain it. You guys probably thought I was going to pull out another smaller tree, but this tree right here is very different and the coolest ones that we have. So what makes this one so unique is that well, there's a lot of things that make this so unique. First and foremost, this is actually two trees in one, right? So you have right down here, you have the dwarf tree, and grafted up top, you actually have a very healthy apple branch. And so what that does is when we grafted it, we basically changed the tree's DNA. So this is a tree that's only about 2 to 3 years. And I realize I haven't even told you what it is. This is a dwarf Ruixue apple tree. And so it got its name, again, being a dwarf tree, but also being a Ruixue apple tree. And as you can see, in about 2 to 3 years, this tree will actually produce fruits, which is something that you don't see in a lot of other bonsai. We do call this one a bonsai, but one thing to keep in mind is the branches are a lot more brittle, right? So the branches cannot be mended and bended just like the other ones do. So it's something to keep in mind. In order to get the shape that you want, you're going to have to work with the tree. And when I say that, you know, it's going to come down to pruning. So if you want to get rid of particular branches, like let's say you don't want it to grow out so far this way, you're going to have to cut it. There's no mending, there's no bending that you could do with the tree with these right here. Now I do have another tree as well. So we have these two. These are the, was it this Variegated Serissa trees? I always forget, I'm always have trouble saying the name, so I always like to call them by their nickname, the Snow in June plants. So you can see here, has a great green color on the inside, and it's highlighted by that yellowish, you know, lighter color there. What's really fun and interesting about these is they will start growing a lot, you know, bigger, or sorry, they'll start growing leaves all the way around the tree, and around spring, summerish, they will start growing flowers. So they're gonna grow a beautiful white flower on that. With the Serissas, if it drops a lot of leaves, don't freak out. It's just getting used to its new environment. I know sometimes the snow and Junes tend to freak out sometimes, but don't stress. That is absolutely normal. The tree is a drama queen. Just make sure to keep it watered. It stays near the sun, and or you know, like near the window, and you know, you'll start seeing all the leaves start coming back, and then it should start blooming too. And depending on the soil that you have in there, water it daily. If you have, some people like to mix the bonsai soil with potting soil, which retains a little bit more moisture, but you're just buying a little bit of time. It's still recommended that you keep an eye on it. Now, a lot of the trees that we have here are going to come in more plastic or resin. And the only reason we do that is because it makes it cheaper to ship it out to you guys. So if you guys do purchase a tree through us, it's not necessary. It's not like it's bad that they're in the resin or plastic, but it's usually recommended that you have, you know, some clay or ceramic. So just want to throw that little tip as well. But that's more of a pre-repot tip rather than a repotting or post-repotting thing. You actually just repotted all your bonsai. Are there any tips to help make sure they stay healthy? So yeah, basically, oh, it looks like we have some things here. Yes, so as far as the light, keep them in bright indirect light for 2 to 3 weeks. Avoid strong direct sunlight right away. Water thoroughly after repotting, and then keep the soil lightly moist, not too wet. No fertilizer. Wait about 2 to 4 weeks before fertilizing to avoid burning new roots. Wind and heat. Protect from strong wind and extreme heat while they recover. And no heavy pruning. Let the tree rest. Avoid major trimming right after repotting. But these right here, we source all of our trees from a place in Half Moon Bay in California. If you guys are in California, highly recommend checking out Half Moon Bay Bonsai. They have such beautiful bonsai. I went there a couple weeks ago, and they had this Chinese elm root over rock tree. It was massive, right? I mean, but it's been growing there for like 30 years. Those are trees that I would absolutely love to sell you guys or show and display for you guys, but we couldn't sell them because the shipping alone would be massive. How old are the trees? They're about 10 years old. Um, Most of the trees that we have are about between 3 to 10, but most of the trees we have are roughly about 10. All the trees that we have in the grand scheme of things are baby trees. I know 10 years old doesn't sound like a baby, but when you really think about how old these trees can get, become heritage pieces, right? So you could pass it down from generation to generation to generation. Just got to make sure to take care of it. When you purchase a tree through us, like I said, while I'm streaming, you can go ahead and pick the tree that you want. Just to let me know you made the purchase, and I'll show you the one that you want, or the ones that we have. And then from there, you'll be able to, you'll also receive our the care instructions for the tree, and you'll also get our contact information. That way, if there's any questions or anything, your tree does something weird, reach out to us and we'll help you out. And yeah, we do send these priority USPS. We usually try to get the tree to you as quick as possible. We really don't want it out of the sun for too long, so